Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of For What It's a Nerd. Today, we are discussing both the Loki finale and generally Loki as a whole, and the Marvels as well, which also released on Friday this week. It's been a busy week for Marvel this week, and let's get into it. So, first off, let's quickly go over the Loki finale because I think I have less to say on this overall. um, the episode was okay. I think the series has been okay. I know a lot of people are saying that Loki is carrying Marvel now. I don't know whether that the season lived up to that idea for me personally. I think cinematically it looks great. I think character wise it's interesting. I think perhaps some of the best establishing shots and some of the best CGI in the MCU is in Loki season 2, and I will attest to that. And I do think that Loki's arc, again, as Tom Hiddleston's come out and kind of said over the last few days, because obviously the actors' strike is now over in America as well, that I feel as if how do I put this? How do I put this? I think Loki really has been tied up well as regards where he is now compared to where he was when obviously we first saw him in Thor, the first movie, the first Thor movie. So don't get me wrong, I didn't dislike the show. I think this season lacked, to me, which I think the first season did a lot better, was the craziness of being going through time, right? So it feels like season 2 to me lost a lot of what season 1 had. What I mean by that is it feels like season 1 really leaned on the idea of what the TVA actually did. Season 2 didn't, like, pretty much at all. And it's all very reactionary, and it all really happens in a very short space of time within the universe. I mean, from the ending of episode 4 to the ending of episode 6 happens, really speaking, in a few hours, which can be a great story device at times, don't get me wrong, but it felt that this show didn't really have the room it needed to breathe. I think maybe the show overall probably lasted a week in universe, and again, that's not, again, a bad thing necessarily, but I think sometimes it doesn't let the plot points breathe. I feel like there wasn't enough action in the show overall as well, and that's something I really don't usually say. Also, I feel this season really struggled from not having a quote unquote big bad, because it changed like 3 or 4 times throughout the show as to who was the bad guy. Saying all that, I think the actors did a really great job. I especially liked seeing, this is of course a little bit more spoiler territory, but I especially liked seeing He Who Remains again, and his dialogue with Loki. I find that Mobius it was really strong for Mobius this season. I feel like he had a lot of driving force. He became less of just I mean, don't get me wrong, he wasn't just that in the first season, but less of just a crux for Loki, a crutch, sorry, for Loki, but now like a fully fledged character in his own right, with his own desires and wants and needs, and to see where he's going forward will be interesting if they do decide to explore him further. Of course, we don't know if they're going to do a Loki season 3. Depends on where they're going with the arc overall, which I still feel like is something that I am now starting to like query with Marvel now. Is like, where are you going with all of these like threads that you have open? I don't mind that there's loads of threads open. I just feel like the tapestry is not as clear as it once was. And I know we're moving towards Secret Wars inevitably, but it just feels like it's been a slow pull. And again, it's kind of the opposite effect, right? So this is the hilarious thing. I've just said how Loki spans maybe 1 week, Loki season 2. But at the same time, I feel like the MCU has barely moved forward. Like every movie would take you forward a year or take you forward a few years prior. Now it feels like everything is just happening at the same time and just after Endgame or whatever, right? And it just feels like, I don't know, I just feel like the advancement has stopped. And so even though I'm usually one who's very, very positive about the MCU, I feel like at the moment I'm kind of like, where are we going? Can we get there a little bit? Can we get there a little bit? I don't know. That's just how I feel about it currently. Saying that, oppositely, I feel like the Marvels is a movie that I'm very glad to have had. Don't get me wrong, it's not a masterpiece. It's not one of my top 10 Marvel films, but I do not think it's one of the worst ones either. Going into a little bit more detail about that, I think this movie really let all three of its leads shine. Don't get me wrong, I think Brie Larson didn't stand up as well as Teyonah Parris and Iman Vellani in the lead roles for this movie. I also feel like the side characters were a little stronger than Brie herself as well. Now, again, this is not because I know there's a lot of dislike for Brie online generally. I just feel like the character of Captain Marvel has not been translated well to screen, and that is the issue rather than the actress, if that makes sense. So I don't think it's Brie Larson's fault. I think it's more that the Captain Marvel's been written kind of one-dimensionally. Less so in this film. I would say she gained a little bit more dimension in this film. There was more of a sense of like, who is she? What is she? What has she done prior that causes, like, she has to understand her power a little bit more in this and what that can cause, but also understand her humanity beyond that, and that she sometimes needs to be human as much as she needs to be Captain Marvel. And you know, I don't think the movie had a particularly like complex plot. It was very, I think someone really put it well when they said, could I imagine this as a comic book? Yes. And I agree. I think this is a comic book storyline. I think it's something that you put on the pages of a 60s, 70s comic book and it'd fly off the shelf. Now, I don't know if I personally loved it to that degree. It felt kind of like, it felt very like action comic-y in like not always the best way. Like, don't get me wrong, some of the action scenes of this movie are amazing, especially because of the premise of the powers of the three superheroes being entwined. You have a lot of cool stuff happening regards that, and it allows for a lot of interesting dynamics built between the characters, and also sets up a little bit of frustration for them to deal with. What it actually does, and was one of the good things I thought, was it helps limit Captain Marvel in this film a little bit, and gives her a sense of like, okay, I need to consider what I'm doing, as I said prior, but also consider these people around me and what they're doing as well, which kind of puts her in this little bit more of a lead role, which of course was something that was hoped for her prior to this movie, and maybe going forward, depending on if she is one of the members of the Avengers in the next run through of that. The movie, of course, sets up a few other things with Miss Marvel looking to set up the Young Avengers, it seems, and of course the mid-credits scene, which, well, that one was quite interesting, with the appearance of both Binary and Beast from the X-Men, from a different universe, which Monica crossed over into after sealing the rift at the end of the movie. One thing that frustrates me, I find, with all of the stuff going on in the MCU at the moment, and this is my big gripe, is that the multiverse is being explored, but not in some kind of synonymous, well-cohesed way. What I mean by that is, I feel like there should have been an event in, let's say, Multiverse of Madness, which it was kind of implied it would be, or let's say WandaVision, or let's say Spider-Man No Way Home set it off, and the event being that the multiverse cracks from there on, right? And then all these things are happening thereafter that are happening in all these other movies. I think that would have tied it together so much better. The fact that the multiverse is being explored, but by loads of different means of it happening, is just kind of like, it's like it becomes contrivance at that point, right? It's more about like, oh, this is the thing we want to do, so we're going to find a way to do it in this specific way, in this specific context. It's like, I don't know. I feel like for example, let's say WandaVision was the case, and let's say that the Scarlet Witch unleashed something from the Darkhold that essentially started crushing realities in on each other, right? Let's say that was the start of it all, right? And then every project since then, you have a character or the villains. Like, let's say from there you have the villains from Spider-Man are pulled through just because of that, not because of Peter wanting to cast a spell. Let's say that actually the villain of the Marvels, which obviously has just come out, is not a character who from our universe who was wronged by Carol, but from another universe in which this other self causes the issue. You could even have that other Carol crossover as well, and suddenly you have a plot that not only connects this wider narrative of, oh my gosh, all these bad things are coming through from this one issue that's happened, right? You have essentially this connective plot that allows all these problems to spin out of it, and thus you feel like, okay, well, these characters are all going to have to come together eventually. I mean, obviously they are anyway, because the multiverse is breaking down. But if there was this one, so Loki set up the idea of the multiverse being able to happen, and then if WandaVision or another show had allowed the idea of the multiverse being allowed to break or otherwise cross over each other, or even if Loki had done that too, then you kind of be able to go into this idea of, okay, all these people are coming from somewhere. I mean, imagine, for example, right, you're watching the Marvels, you've dealt with this character who's like, so, you know, there's this interaction where you have the two characters going, let's say, Monica and Carol. Let's say that they're having this discussion about, like, who is this person you're fighting? She's like, I don't know, I've never dealt with her before, and they're all calling her the Annihilator, which happens in the movie, and she's just like, I don't literally know where this title's coming from. And then the reveal, obviously, in the movie is you destroy all this, and then, like, the villain can go to Hala and see that Hala is actually not destroyed in this universe, and then the reveal is that actually, oh shit, Hala is fine, this is wrong, I'm in the wrong place, I'm in the wrong time, and or the, you know, whatever, and then you find out that there is this other Carol, this other version on the other side, right? This evil Carol. And you could even have the three, along with Darben, go to the other side to defeat this Carol, to essentially help Hala on the other side. And then let's say that happens, and let's say they're trying to then close the rift so that the two realities don't essentially span out like they did at the end of the movie anyway. But Monica has to stay behind. I understand that wouldn't necessarily work super well for the X-Men cameo that they had in the end of the movie, but we can't consider taglines as part of the plot of the main movie, right? So, like, if you did that, suddenly you have a movie that really interconnects with the idea that these realities are all bending in on each other, but also really, like, the plot would be stronger, right? Because you have this idea that there's a darker Carol. What Captain Marvel could become if she was, you know, was less inclined to hold back, if she was less inclined to be the good guy, if she didn't understand her humanity. And put that face to face with her, and you could play up this whole idea that she's like, for example, earlier in the movie, she had to make the decision to leave Skrulls behind, and like you can say that all these things that she's making these hard choices, but actually what she's doing is she's setting herself up to become the villain. You know, essentially, to like, obviously that wouldn't happen; she wouldn't become the villain. But what I'm saying is, you would then have a story where the Dark Mirror is not like Darben necessarily. Darben's rage and anger is justified because she feels slighted by a Captain Marvel that does not exist in this universe. And I just feel like it would be a stronger movie. I also feel like, because I feel like Darben as a character was not fleshed out in a way that was like cool. And also I really didn't like the fact that Hala was just kind of like, all of that stuff about Hala that happened was just flashbacks. Like, I feel like that should have either been a scene at the beginning of the movie, or like or either like that should have been a part of the movie, like so either like a backstory at the beginning of the movie, or like, you know, again, part of the movie where something happens on Hala that Captain Marvel is a part of, and that spans everything into motion, right? But it felt like they had to try and cover too much in too short amount of time. Saying all that, though, I really thought the movie was fun. I thought the movie was a nice change of pace, and I think it stands out in the Phase 5 stuff, to be honest. I think when you look at, I think it was better than Quantumania, just slightly. I think it was definitely better than Love and Thunder. Guardians of the Galaxy 3, of course, is a different entity altogether, and of course above most films generally in the MCU, even like a lot of Phase 1 stuff. But like, but I would say that The Marvels is a good film. Not stellar, not more than a popcorn movie, but it could have been better. And I think the MCU could be better generally by cohesing just that bit more what they're doing with the multiverse. It feels like there's too many people trying to make too many different senses, so to speak, different sense of what they're doing with the multiverse, and it just doesn't work, sadly, in my opinion at the moment. So hopefully something going forward would maybe right the ship, so to speak. But in the meantime, I think we'll leave it there, guys. So thank you guys for listening / watching. As always, if you have enjoyed this content, like, follow, subscribe, do whatever your platform allows. And we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.